Former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner is known nationally as a strong advocate for progressive politics. That advocacy has earned her praise and attacks from inside and outside the political establishment. And I wanted to speak with Senator Turner about what it's like to be a progressive politician in a moderate political world. So, Senator Turner, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, TW. It's great to be here with you
Yeah,
today.
thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chop it up with me. I really appreciate it. Let's take it back to the very beginning. I'd love to know about your political journey. What attracted you to politics in the first place and progressive politics in particular?
There's a saying out there, what you are seeking is seeking you. I have to say that politics kind of found me, but in some ways it's very spiritual. I mean, I certainly did not set out to be in the political realm. I actually wanted to be a teacher or a nurse, believe it or not. Not many people know that about me. I did succeed at becoming a teacher. I was a college professor at Cuyahoga Community College, a community college here in the great state of Ohio, and really enjoyed the classroom for many years. But as I kept navigating through this thing, politics just kind of, I don't know, it just touched me because I believe that it is a ministry. And if more elected officials treated it that way, I think that we would get a whole lot more done if there was an understanding that you're supposed to be in service to the people. So long story less long, I had a fellowship on the state level, and that opened my eyes onto state government. Worked for actually a woman who made history by the name of Ryan McClellan. Was a state senator out of Dayton, and also served as mayor. She's still kicking it very much so. So I guess I shouldn't say was, but it was such an honor to work for her as a fellow, a LSC fellow in the state of Ohio. That really opened my eyes to what the state level government could do. And then I had the opportunity to come back home to Cleveland and work for Mayor Michael R. White. So TW, I've done it all. I mean, I've been a local level, a state level. Certainly, and many people who are maybe joining us today know that I've navigated the national level through being on both Senator Bernie Sanders campaigns, one as a national surrogate, and then the 2020 as a national co-chair for that campaign, getting a chance to travel all over this country. And again, cementing in my mind why it is so vitally important to elect people who actually care about the people that they want to serve.
While you were on the Bernie campaign, you were known as a very outspoken person for progressive politics and for radical change that needed to take place in this country for basically the public to progress. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like to have what is considered in this political process a radical vision inside sort of a moderate political process?
Oh, I sighed deeply. And, radical just simply means getting at the root. And certainly the Sanders campaign was very trailblazing in 2016, especially so, and bringing it on home to run back to back in 2020. But it really is about, what some folks or what neoliberals would call radical, I call just being in tune with what the American people want. When people are polled in this country, they want to see the government take a greater role in providing health care. They want to see the cost of prescription drugs go down. They're on the side of the House of Labor, for example, the people who are out there striking, and particularly the folks that of the UAW, who are, to me, they're the canary in the coal mine, or they are a representation of other workers in this country who are standing up for better wages, work conditions, and benefits. It's dealing with class and caste. I firmly do not believe that we can have a class consciousness without a caste consciousness. And what I mean by that, and dealing with issues of race, and particularly anti-Blackness, is at the foundation of every other ism in this country. And until we deal with that, we're really not dealing in a serious way about class issues.
Hmm. Let's go back to 2016 really quick, because 2016 was a contentious year for elections, to put it mildly. And you were in the thick of that, as a vocal supporter of Bernie Sanders. We were coming off the wake of the rebirth of Black protests, in the wake of the police killings of Black men and women, the emotional highs and lows of the Obama presidency, and a general hope that mainstream political landscape could be changed via grassroots organizing. What did you discover in your time with the Sanders campaign and working on a national level?
That people were really hungry for the message of our campaign, which was certainly more palatable in 2016 than it was in 2020, because the mainline vision in 2020, or at least what the American people were sold, that the most important thing was to get rid of Trump. Now, while we must do away with neo-fascism, there's no doubt about it. I would say, T, that the difference between 2016 and 2020 is that people had closed off their imagination. 2016, people did start to believe that they deserve better than what they were getting. And to have Senator Sanders out there being that candidate saying that you're getting a raw deal, that you deserve universal health care, that teachers do deserve to make a minimum of $60,000 a year. That's minimum. And that we must deal with the 4 violences against Black people. Very clear in that the 4 violences against Black people: political, economic, social, and environmental, and on and on and on. Like, people were really hungry for that. And I think in that campaign, folks saw a vision of the 21st century version of the Economic Bill of Rights. If you and I were to dabble in a little history, we know that President FDR, on the backdrop of World War II, was working on the Economic Bill of Rights, a little different than how we would see it now, but it was a great foundation. There was healthcare there was jobs for folks, believe that people should be educated. Also, there was something in there about recreation, that folks should not have to work their fingers to the bone without being able to enjoy a modicum of their life, their life. And that not only that wealthy, it's not just wealthy people who deserve to live a good life. When you build on that, Asa Philip Randolph, one of the greatest unionists of the 20th century, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, how he stood up and threatened FDR, and he utilized the power of labor to bring attention to the ills that were happening to Black people. He even took the 4 freedoms that FDR laid out there and teamed up with some other folks. About 150 people from all sectors in this society signed on to the people's budget, and that was in the 1960s. So, TW, some of the things that we are talking about today, none of this stuff is new. We are building on a stronger foundation. And so what I found out in 2016, a long way for me to say that people were hungry for the kind of change that our campaign was championing.
Also in 2016, there was vicious pushback within the Democratic establishment to progressive candidates, and also
per usual. Sorry to cut you off. Per usual.
No, it's okay. Which is ironic because a lot of the things that you mentioned poll really well with like grassroots and in poor and working class areas. But there was extreme pushback, which was revealed by the email leak in July 2016 that revealed bias against the Sanders campaign on the part of the DNC and its then chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Schultz subsequently resigned as DNC chair, was replaced by Donna Brazile, who was also connected to some of the leaks and also apologized to the Sanders campaign and its supporters. Take me back to the convention and the charged atmosphere on the floor, and also the charged atmosphere within the convention when there was almost like a civil war going on between the moderate wing of the Democratic Party and the progressive wing led by you and Senator Sanders.
Yeah, I mean, I was there, and just hearing you ask the question, my mind is spinning thinking about it. Was a charged environment. You could cut it with a knife. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz was forced to resign. I want the folks to understand who were not there. She was forced to resign. She didn't want to resign, but the atmosphere was charged, and the progressive wing of the Democratic Party was having none of it because it was very clear what was happening. As you know, there was a lawsuit filed against the DNC, and they pretty much said in court, the lawyer said that the DNC, now I'm paraphrasing, but the DNC is pretty much a club. And we know that whether it's the RNC or the DNC, these are private entities that get to control public elections. But I'm gonna put that in the parking lot. But what these lawyers said is that the Democratic Party was under no obligation to necessarily do the right thing, that they can go into a smoke-filled room and pick the nominee, and there was nothing that anybody can do about it. I double dare people to go back and look up the exact words that they said. I am paraphrasing that here. And so by the time we got to the convention, it was crystal clear that folks had put their bodies on the scale to try to upset the stasis and to swing it more towards Secretary Clinton at that time. And progressives were just on fire. They did things like try to, pan the camera a certain way. I want you guys to know all these conventions are theater, both the RNC too. So don't say Sister Senator Turner. I'm not just saying this about the DNC. It's the RNC too. All of these things are theater meant to convince everyday Americans who may not be involved in party politics that there was going to be a kumbaya moment. Nothing could be further than the truth. And that is why they needed Donna Brazile to take over, because there was going to be pure pandemonium and chaos in that place.
According to data from the 2021 American Community Survey, the current working class largely works in service industries, particularly retail, healthcare, food service and accommodation, and building services, also in manufacturing and construction. Those remain large employers as well. Black, Hispanic, and other workers of color make up 45% of the working class in America, while non-Hispanic white workers comprise the remaining 55%. Nearly half of the working class is women, and 8% have disabilities. Political platforms across party lines don't reflect that diversity in their messaging and in their policy planks. Why is that?
Because there's no working class consciousness with the people who hold the power within the bubble. Again, the parties, the political parties, not much difference between both of them when you get down to the nit and to the grit of it. And some might call foul and say, Senator, this ain't right. Why are you saying that? I am saying this because there is corporatist capture among both major parties, meaning that the corporatist wings of both of these parties answer to the owner donors and do not answer to the people. If they answer to the people, then the things that poll the highest among people across the political spectrum would be done. We would not have done away with the enhanced child tax credit. We would have universal health care in this country. And that's just to name a few. I mean, there are many things that they just ignore and just do it their way because they do not believe that working class people, and when I say that, I mean that broadly. Some of us may be blessed to be at the top of that working class. Some people are in the middle of the working class, and some people are at the bottom. But unless you got a sugar daddy, a sugar mama, or a sugar somebody, you are part of the working class, TW. And that is so important for folks to understand. So it is a lack of working class consciousness, a lack of really wanting to do anything other than to answer to their owner donors. They, and it's not just, it's people, there's no consequence. Let me put it that way. The American people do not levy a consequence for being sold out by their elected officials.
There is a class of gatekeepers made up of political operatives, media pundits, and communications directors that largely dictates the platforms of elected officials and political candidates and the way they address them. And they also help decide what issues they ignore and avoid. Many of these gatekeepers are from marginalized groups. Do you think instead of advocating for the groups they belong to, that many of these gatekeepers provide cover for the policies that may not be beneficial to the identities they claim?
Oh, absolutely, they do. And we see that time and time again. And there was a point in time in this country's history where the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus, was the consciousness of that Congress. And that is not the case this day. Now, not everybody in that Black Caucus, but I'm talking about the Black Caucus as a whole. They answer to the same corporate interests as anybody else. They are not, let's take, and I know, PW, we always talk about, voting rights when it comes to Black people. Black people just have a particular interest in it because of our shared experience, but it's not the only thing that we care about. But I'm going to highlight that for a minute. Or if we think about the legal system, we call it the criminal justice system. I don't know how you can have criminal and justice in the same breath. We need to rethink that thing. But the legal system. So we had two bills, right? When the Democrats had full control of every chamber, and I don't want to hear nothing about they didn't have as many votes. No, what they said in 2020 is that if you give us the power, that material changes would happen for the American people. And it has not happened for the American people in a deep sort of way. But I digress. Why? Where was the outrage when the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, Justice and Voting Rights Act, didn't pass? Where was the outrage when the Floyd Policing Act did not pass? Where was that type of outrage? Where was the outrage when the Congress did not renew the enhanced child tax credit? They did all that bragging, TW, about how this is going to pull children out of poverty, in which it did, only to have them catapulted right back into that poverty. Riddle me this. If you have poor children, then that means that their parents are poor. That means that their communities are poor by and large, and that there needs to be some collective action via a social contract that must take place to lift people out of poverty. But they couldn't even do that right. But meanwhile, in the hoods where people are misunderstood, and whether those are rural hoods, urban hoods, or suburban hoods, we don't have enough money to do things on the domestic side of the ledger. But we got this president asking the Congress for $100 billion for war. Hello, somebody. And let me just go on and quote the urban poet Tupac when he said, it's funny. We got money for wars, but we can't feed the poor. Profound words spoken when he said it, and even more profound right now to this day. Why is it? You got the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen with a straight face during an interview about a week ago when she was asked about these wars, can we afford it? She said, oh yeah, we can afford two. So we can afford two wars, but we can't afford to cancel student debt. We can afford two wars, but we can't afford universal health care. We can afford two wars, but we couldn't maintain the enhanced child tax credit. So TW, you see where I'm going with this. And I hope the people who are joining us this afternoon understand that they deserve so much better. We in this country deserve so much better than what we are getting. And since the U.S. Treasury Secretary dipped into the international policy of war saying that we can afford it, I don't want to hear the imaginary they ask those of us who are champions of issues that lift the American people to mumble ne'er word, to quote my grandmother, about what we can't afford. It's humiliating, TW. It's enraging, it's insulting, and it is the wrong way to go in this country. Deny the American people what they need to thrive.
Let's focus on Black voters. Let's stay on that for a minute. Every group centers issues that affect them before aligning with other groups. And it seems like this is only an issue when Black people and Black voters try to center issues that directly affect them. Do you think that's true in electoral politics? And if so, why do you think that is?
Oh, absolutely, it's true, because Black people are always asked to take the sloppy seconds. It was there from the founding of this country, and it's still the truth today. If you think about historically any of the great compromises that have taken place in this country, the compromise of 1877, let me just go on back to Reconstruction, if I might. The history professor in me is rising up today.
Please do.
That compromise pulled the federal troops out of the South and gave the very same slave-holding folks back the power that they had. The Dixiecrats, aka the Democrats, the Southern Democrats, aka the Dixiecrats. We can't run from that. Now, that was supposed to be a compromise, but who got messed over during that compromise? Black folks. The Missouri, you think of any compromise that has happened legally in this country, and you will find that Black people, by and large, got sold out.
Even the Atlanta Compromise.
There it is, in those compromises. So we just got to understand that there's a spiritual dynamic or dimension to what is happening in this country, and that will continue, especially when it comes to Black people. And so unless we wake up and shake up the system and stop accepting things as they are. Can you imagine if our forebears accepted everything as it was? And I'm really talking about chattel slavery, like in Black folks, by and large, because there were naysayers then and people who didn't believe. And we get it. When you got that kind of brute force against you, and I'm not casting any dispersion on any of our ancestors that were not as courageous as another, because chattel slavery is one of the most brutal form of slavery known to humankind. But let me put that to the parking lot. My major point is this. Can you imagine, where was there ever a time we wouldn't be free as Black folks? I'm jumping all over the place on this because you got me going. We would not be free as Black folks if we had ancestors that had the mentality of some of the Black folks who hold especially elected office today about what we cannot do. They radically fought for their freedom. And yeah, did they have some backup singers? Yeah, we did. We had some people, some folks that said of other ethnicities who said that slavery was wrong and we're going to get in where we fit in to help undo this injustice, this horrendous injustice. But Black folks gained their freedom because Black folks decided that they were going to be radical about this thing, that they weren't just going to sit back and allow this to continue to happen without putting bodies on the line. So I just find it the height of insult when any Black person, especially those elected, tell us to be practical and to be reasonable. None of that has worked for Black people throughout history. It is not the way that we make gains. We must push and shake up this system. And when Black folks gain liberation, every other type of folks gain liberation as well. Black liberation is universal liberation.
To that point, African Americans and African American voters in particular have historically been seen as America's moral compass and an avatar of human rights issues in America and abroad. And because of that, many movements who have grievances around the world lobby to get the support of the Black electorate. And we usually extend that support individually or through political bodies like, as you said, the Congressional Black Caucus. In recent years, though, many people in the Black electorate, especially younger people in the Black electorate, have begun to question that unconditional support and feel that it hasn't been reciprocated. Do you think that's true? And how do you think that can be remedied?
I do think that's true. I mean, the onus is on other folks to remedy that in their community. I mean, every immigrant that has ever come to this country and gained rights gained it off of the backs of Black people. And that's something that they have to realize. Those are the facts. So whether they're Hispanic, it don't matter who they are, they gained a certain type of liberation, and especially of color, because we know that there was a period of time in this country where discrimination does happen to other immigrants, but no other immigrant was chattel slavery in this country. And every other immigrant came here on, because they wanted to. We got here by force. These are two different things.
And so everybody could assimilate, and everybody who came here could assimilate into white.
Could assimilate, right? You hit it on the head. When all white immigrants became white. That's the bottom line. Black folks have never had that luxury. Now, some among us are could pass. There was some passing going on here and there. And again, I ain't casting dispersion, because when you know what type of pain it takes to be Black in America, and I would dare to say Black in the world, I kind of get it and understand it. But we couldn't just assimilate like that. And so every other group has decided they want to be on top of us. See, and that's problematic. And especially when I talk about immigrants of color who seem to, not all, but have a mentality that they are better than Black Americans. So I want them all to understand this history lesson. Any gains that any marginalized group has gained, they gained it because of the liberation struggle of Black people, period. And so they just got to accept that. TW, it ain't nothing wrong with accepting that. And then accept the understanding that Black folks are always showing a modicum of mercy and sympathy and camaraderie with other groups, but it is not replicated when it comes to our struggle en masse in the same way that we do. So I get the point that younger African-American people are making. I receive that point. And it is time that these other groups recognize it and start to reciprocate. The onus is not on us. The onus is on them.
Let's talk a little bit about the messaging given to Black voters, because we saw quite a few interesting things in the past couple of election cycles. We saw many younger Black voters and some older ones highly upset with some of the condescending messaging aimed at Black voters in 2020. We saw strippers, we saw twerking, we saw pop locks, we saw fish fries, the electric slide, swag surf. We saw even twerking political candidates. And this sort of messaging is never used to address the political concerns of other voting blocs. Why do you think that is? I can see it on your face.
It's really insulting. We need to have a family meeting. We need a barbecue, a family reunion. We really do. And this meeting might have to be out in the open, but we need it, because you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. They do none of those other antics, I call them, for any other ethnic or racial group in this country, but only Black folks, because we fall for the okie doke far too often. Now,
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm so sick of the electric slide and swag surf to the point I hate them records, both of them at this point.
Yeah, right. And it's an insult to the record. They some good tunes, And listen, are we a vibrant people? I get it. When people try to dehumanize you and take your very existence and to say that you are subhuman, that when you can find a modicum of happiness and a way to express that, we're a very culturally expressive people, generally speaking. I'm talking about a culture. Culture is a shared way of life of a people. It doesn't mean 100%, but it's our shared, it's what we share, what we have in common, and the carryovers from the continent of Africa, particularly from the West Coast, where most of our ancestors came from. And so when you're trying to find some kind of joy in moments where there is no joy, I get it. But then what this culture, this Eurocentric worldview has done is they have taken our culture and used it in a way that is very limiting and almost making it clownish, And so they think, hey, we do some electric slide, we wear some kente cloth, we kneel, and then we got them. So what Black folks need to do is stop being such a cheap date, because at some point the onus is on us to set these people straight, to say that we ain't gonna fall for the trinkets. We need real policy. We need real material changes that impact us generationally as Black people. If we are the ones that turn the tide for elections, and we do, then we need to be treated that way. There needs to be a consequence when our needs are not met. And we got to stop falling so in love with politicians that we like. It's all right to like these folks, want to have a drink with these folks, whatever you want to do, electric slide with these folks. But at the end of the day, it is really about what have they done for us lately, to quote the great Janet Jackson. And it has to be something that changes conditions materially, not get you all giddy. I mean, we less than the mistress now. We the damn side piece. That's what this is turned into. I mean, at least the mistress get a necklace every now and then, a diamond bracelet. We get nothing. We get, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black. You know, that's what we get. We get Black elected officials being chastised for not following the line. That's what we get. So until Black people as a community wake up and say that we're not going to be treated this way, we're always going to continue to be treated like the side piece in politics. Now, the Republicans don't rock with us at all because they know that almost 100% of us vote for Democrats, and Democrats take us for granted. So here we are.
Mm-hmm. There's an African-American proverb, all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
That's it.
And this can be applied across a lot of cultures. Do you think that there's an obsession, at least on the comms part, with surface level representation that takes focus away from issues like you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Let's take India Walton, Buffalo, New York. I'm old enough to remember that. TW, you remember that election?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
I've done research on it, so I know that history.
Okay, well, you laid out. She won, right? Am I right? She won the primary. Okay, that wasn't good enough for these neoliberals. So she was running against a Black man. She's a young progressive Black woman, literally won the primary. They were so upset about that they, the neoliberal within the Democratic Party, including Black folks, changed the rules of the game so that the mayor who lost the primary could run on another ballot and come on up in the general and beat her. Now, TW, enhance this for us, please.
It's when that happened, it was really fascinating to me, because if your whole premise is elections need to be certified and elections need to be run on a platform of honesty and fairness, how can you snatch victory from a woman who won fair and square, at least won the primary fair and square, and then completely change the rules around and say that, okay, we're not going to certify this. We're going to pull somebody, we're going to dig somebody up, and we're going to prop them up because they're connected to the establishment, and we'll run them, and we'll completely ignore what you've done. We'll ignore the history making that you've done while we've been talking about Black girl magic for the past 3 or 4 years, and we're going to completely ignore that. That was fascinating to me. And it was also interesting that that's the sort of thing you see that we claim that happens in other countries, where we just don't certify a election, or we create some sort of coup to get out of the rightfully elected politician and bring somebody else in. But nobody said anything about it. There was like a 2-day story that it disappeared.
They didn't say a mumbling word. You know why? Because that Black girl magic was coming from a progressive Black woman that was challenging the system, that was indicting the system, that was aiming to bring coalitions of people together by changing the game. That is why it was acceptable for them to do what they did. So it's India Waltons, the Nina Turners of the world. You know, even if I look at one of my Latina sisters in Texas, you know, why the Democrats were saying, oh my God, the Republicans are coming after abortion. I'm just examples I'm giving. Now, they knew they were coming after abortion. They made it clear 50 years ago they was coming after abortion. But here we are. They did exactly what they, even if it took them 50 years to do it, they did it. And so when you got Jessica Cisneros running in Texas on a pro-choice, as a pro-choice Democrat, and you got people like Leader Pelosi supporting the Democrat that is anti-choice, and then got the pure and unadulterated gall when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade to send out emails raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. Almost cussed.
I know.
You know, off of hypocrisy. You see them? So I think younger Black people in particular are just sick and tired of the lies. They understand when people are not being authentic. They understand the game. And far too often, the Democratic Party, again, not letting the Republicans off the hook, but they run in too much game. And people tired of it. Until you asked me earlier, some of the things I learned on the trail, I did learn that there are some seasoned folks out there too who were tired of the game. They didn't talk a lot about them during the 2016 or the 2020 election, but a lot of more seasoned folks were rocking with our campaign and sick and tired. I talked to many elders who say that they wanted to see a third party in this country, that they wanted better for their children and their grandchildren and generations unborn, and that the way that the two-party system is going is not working. So I want folks to know that not all extra seasoned folks were rocking with the neoliberals.
According to the Council on Foreign Relations, from 2022 to July this year, the United States sent $76.8 billion in aid to Ukraine. Last Friday, the Biden administration made its case for a $105 billion national security package that includes an additional $61.4 billion in aid to Ukraine and $14.3 billion for Israel in the wake of the Palestine-Israeli war that erupted on October 7th. While this is happening, the demand for reparations has gone from a concept discussed on the fringes to a growing call to action among Black voters is beginning to reach the ears of people in office. And even Black people barely interested in politics are getting vocal about seeing the United States government giving away money to everything except what would improve the material conditions of African Americans. What do you think the outcome of this will be in the electorate if this isn't addressed?
Oh, it's going to have a negative impact. If Democrats don't change course, and that $105 billion that you just laid out, it just came out today that the president has a $50 billion package for some domestic issues. I think firefighting was in there and some other things. Let me get this straight. $50 billion for domestic, but you're going to send $105 billion of our dollars elsewhere. Your point about reparations, absolutely, this is waking people up to the fact that America has the money, they just don't have the will. And they lack the will to pay reparations to the American descendants of slaves because we are talking about Black people. It is going to have a consequence because people are seeing they can print up money when they want to. They can do what they want to do. So why don't they want to atone for the damage done, the sin of slavery, enslavement of our ancestors, and the ripple effect that it had even beyond slavery? When you think about redlining, think about Jim Crow, there are many variables. It's not just the enslavement of our people. It is all of the travesty and tragedy that happened thereafter that is still happening to this day. So,
even the GI Bill, Black veterans were excluded from the GI Bill, and that was the main driver that that drove up white home ownership when veterans came back from World War II. Black veterans were excluded from that.
That's right. Oh, the Homestead Act. Let's go and talk about that, where they gave, acres and acres of land to white Americans and also white immigrants, but none for Black people. Hell, they couldn't even carry out the 40 acres and a mule. But again, when it comes to Black people, they can't find a way to make it right, but they can find a way to do all this other stuff all around the world. It is going to have a consequence in this election cycle. I think there's going to be an awakening, TW, that the political forces are not really, they're not ready for at all. And Eli Mastyle wrote a wonderful column in The Nation magazine, really laying out what you and I are talking about right now. And I encourage people to read that. So everybody not going to fall for the foolishness and the excuses. Again, if you can send all this money overseas, then you can do something here in this country domestically, and you definitely can deal with reparations. TW, one of the three of the Black Wall Street children just recently died, and forgive me, I'm blanking, on her name right now. There were three elders holding it strong, all over the age of 100 years old, and they all got a chance to go before Congress a couple of years ago. Congress did nothing. If we want to talk about reparations, you look into the eyes of those elders who were children when white terrorists came into their city, into their town, and burnt up their stuff and stole their stuff. They were alive, because oftentimes people, you guys didn't really experience it. They're not thinking about the ripple effects of it, but you got three elders who experienced this as children, and the Congress did nothing. They had an opportunity to do something, even starting off with those three who deserve it, and their children, their children's children, and they did absolutely nothing. It's a disgrace.
Mm-hmm. According to Pew Research, the median age of the House of Representatives skews younger, while the median age of the Senate skews older. In Black civil rights orgs, this is true as well, where we see people who have held power and influence since the 80s, in some cases the 70s, still guiding the collective Black political direction. and often finding themselves at odds with the desires of a younger skewing Black electorate. Do you think this has created resistance to new ideas and new strategies for Black voters?
I do. I mean, listen, if all of us live long enough, we'll be in that season category. But, and there is, I want to put a but here, there is something to be said about wisdom. But if you are not willing to evolve in your thinking, then we have a problem. And that is what is happening in this Congress, and particularly House of Representatives. When we talk about Congress, it's both houses, but oftentimes people think we're only talking about the House of Representatives. But yeah, that is problematic. I will say that on the other end of that, though, just having somebody young that is not evolved, that does not have that type of creative revolutionary thinking, that's just another number two. So I'm not just going to lay this at the feet of somebody that may be older. It is about a consciousness. So if you don't have a revolutionary consciousness, if you don't have a humanitarian consciousness, it don't matter if you're 23 or you're 93. You are a problem.
Where should progressives who want to work within the framework of electoral politics and are looking for a political home go? Do they continue being close to the Democratic Party? Do they consider the Republican Party? Do they go independent, or do they have to build something new?
I think all of the above, TW. None of this is going to save us just doing one of those things. We actually need people to be thinking about doing all of the above. And that is really what is so exciting about 2024. I mean, we do have two candidates, whether you agree with them or not. It's not about agreeing. I'm talking tactically, who are running as independent. As Dr. Cornel West and you have Robert Kennedy Jr. Both are running as independents. And then you have Marianne Williamson, who is out there holding strong, running as a Democrat. You got Cenk Uygur now, who's entered the race, running as a Democrat. And so you need people who are going to shake this up. It's just asinine to have over 300 million people in two political party categories. Who thought of that? Who decided that that was okay? So there is an awakening happening. And beyond electoral politics, I really believe where we're going to get the most work done in the shortest amount of time is through the House of Labor. It is the place where people are united, but regardless of gender, ethnicity, political affiliation, any of the identities, what they identify with is the fact that they are catching hell. And they want a workplace that has better benefits, wages, and work conditions. And they are united based on what they have in common. I also think that is the space that we can deal with both class and caste in a deeper way than we have done in the 21st century, which is why I started We Are Somebody, which is an organization designed to help catapult and to bring together working class people and to help fund, to help organize, and to help amplify the voices of working class people, to be a bridge between unionized workers and non-unionized workers, and to talk about in a deep way and utilize the bright light that we have within the House of Labor to deal more directly with anti-Blackness and other types of isms.
November 2024 is fast approaching, and it looks like it's going to be even more contentious than 2016 or 2020. Many of the tactics used in both of those election cycles are coming back around. This is the most important election of our generation. We have to choose the lesser of two evils. A lot of the sloganeering. What do you think will happen if these slogans aren't replaced by solid policy that centers the concerns of the voters that people want to reach?
People not coming out to vote. That's what's going to happen. The largest group of voters in this country are not Democrats and they're not Republicans. They are independent voters. But we know the way that the system is skewed on purpose by design, folks, is that in most states, you have to identify with one of the political parties to get the opportunity to vote in the primary. It is rigged in that way. Now, let me back up from that to say that if these things are not addressed, voters are just going to simply stay home, or even those that would be eligible to vote, they're going to decide that they don't need to vote because nothing changes when they do so. And although I am a big proponent for going to vote, even if you got to cuss while you're doing it, okay, I understand.
All right, Senator Turner, what are your plans going into this year and moving into 2024?
So wearesomebody.org, TW, I need people to go to wearesomebody.org, support our efforts to amplify, organize, and lift up working class people all across this country, unionized or not, this is the space where we're going to get the quickest change. While other organizations are working on the electoral politics side, I have chosen to work in this particular space. I'm going to I've already started traveling the country already. I'm going to be doing even more so in 2024, not only just preaching the gospel that as working class people, we ought to be in unison with one another on some very key issues. It ain't got to be 100%, but it needs to be some main issues, and forcing and calling out folks and making sure that there are consequences. And I'm also going to be out there talking about this 2024 election cycle as well. I want to remind folks, you definitely deserve better than what you are getting right now. And if each and every one of us are willing to put a little extra on our ordinary, extraordinary things can and will happen. If you are fed up with electoral politics, come on, wearesomebody.org. Get into this fight to help workers in this country get exactly what they deserve.
All right, Senator Nina Turner, thank you so much for your time and joining me.
Brother Walker, thank you for having me.
All right, you have a good day.
You too.